Hi, and thank you for joining. My name is Sharon Corbett, Manager of Intellectual Property and Working Groups with the Eclipse Foundation. And today we'll take you through a high-level presentation on open source software governance and the model the Eclipse Foundation utilizes. So our agenda for today is a little bit about the history of Eclipse IP management and how we've changed our approach earlier this year, which is to a license compliance model for third-party libraries. We'll identify how we now trust other sources of licensed data information. This will take us to identify how we have created our very own license checking tool, and we have automated this process for our Eclipse projects. This will be followed by a recorded demo of our license checker tooling in action by Wayne Beaton. And then we'll end with some best practices and a question and answer session. So why IP management? The Eclipse Foundation implements a policy based on a framework of established and proven processes to ensure risk is mitigated in the open source software that Eclipse projects deliver. We do this to avoid any infringement, to ensure we're gaining necessary rights, and to ensure the license is compatible with either the EPL and/or the project licenses. This is to enable commercial adoption, to have the inclusion of Eclipse open source software in proprietary products. At Eclipse, of course, we are a vendor neutral playing ground. Our committers are employees of member companies, employees of non-member companies, and of course, individual committers. So the idea and goal here is to ensure that all of this co-developed content is free and clear for use by everyone. Since the inception of the Eclipse Foundation in 2004, IP management has been one of the core services with the goal of allowing adopters to use source code downloaded from Eclipse servers in their commercial products and to build commercial services around that. Of course, we want to ensure that we have been doing this so that commercial entities have the confidence that they can consume the open source content from Eclipse. In order to do so, we have used and relied on a board-approved IP policy, formal legal agreements to ensure we receive the necessary rights to accept and license the intellectual property included in Eclipse projects and to be able to make that content then available for use. Of course, this has been followed by a rigorous due diligence process where we perform forensic analysis on both the project code written by committers and contributors, as well as the third-party libraries that were leveraged by Eclipse projects. And this due diligence review process consisted of license, what was the license of the content? Had that been the license from the conception of the content? Was there a license change? Did the people who contributed to the project agree to the license of that content at that time? What was the provenance of the content? So who were the authors? Who were the copyright holders? If any consents were needed, was that consent received? And then, of course, if we were able to resolve both license and provenance, we were then able to move on to scanning that code base for any anomalies. So previously, we could not support agile development as this full due diligence process, which I just spoke about, was far too lengthy for third-party libraries. And of course, at the rate which third-party libraries change and rev, and the sheer number of libraries involved when Node.js and NPM packaging became very popular, there was just no way for us to scale. So as a result, in late 2019, in fact, at EclipseCon 2019 in Ludwigsburg, the board of directors approved a change to the Eclipse IP policy. And this change allowed us to begin to work on and implement in early 2020 a new process. And I'm happy to share that new process with you today. So we have streamlined, we have redefined our approach to the review of third-party libraries to a license compliance model only. This is to support and enable agile development, new technologies, as I mentioned, Node, NPM, and to really be part of project success. We are now part of the software development activity for Eclipse projects. This gives faster turnaround service. This increases project velocity. It's a much more flexible and predictable approach for our projects. And of course, it reduces administrivia. So I'll talk a little bit more about how that happens in our next slide, but we do all of this while remaining risk focused. We are still mitigating risk, and this is still our #1 goal. So I'm very happy to talk a little bit more about the license compliance model of third-party content. So what is this license compliance model for third-party content we've been talking about? Well, we're excited. And it's been very well received to date by the projects who have already begun to use this new approach. So we're focused now for third-party content that is leveraged by Eclipse projects. So not where an Eclipse project is modifying the content, but just leveraging it. So we are focused on the licensing of that content. Is that license compatible? And how do we comply with any of the terms of that license so that we're in compliance? This is also driven by a board-approved set of licenses. The link is on the slide. This link to the licenses, it's not an exhaustive list of the licenses. And of course, should an Eclipse project require a third party that is not on the approved list, they are to contact us and we will review that license for its compatibility. And if we feel that it can pass a set of criteria that we have, we then take that to the board of directors and seek approval for it on behalf of the Eclipse project, ensuring that it's now approved for Eclipse distribution purposes. In addition to this, Eclipse projects, and this is the important piece, Eclipse projects are now enabled to self-validate during the development cycle the IP that they are leveraging. So the idea here is to trust but verify. And of course, this is how we approach all of our community and our committers. We trust that everyone is doing the right thing, they're following processes, and they are abiding by the legal agreements that they have signed. Now, that doesn't mean, as I mentioned, that we are not doing any follow-on prior to a formal release. We certainly are. We still ensure that there is a full IP clearance before a project is approved to release. And we do that on our side to ensure that nothing has been missed. So we're now verifying that everything that's contained in that release has been vetted and is cleared for IP approval. And this leads us to leveraging and trusting other sources of license information, which we'll talk about in the next slide. Trusted sources of licensed data. The Eclipse Foundation has its own database. It's contained in an instance of Bugzilla, which is fondly known as IPzilla. And yes, we recognize the simplistic system it is. We are planning to look into replacing it in 2021. That said, the database has been painstakingly built over the lifespan of the Eclipse Foundation. We have 16 years of deeply vetted project code analysis as well as third-party analysis files. That gives us a vast amount of data, in fact, in excess of 20,000 records. Clearly Defined, which is an OSI initiative sponsored by Microsoft, is also curating and determining licensed data applicable to third-party content. It harvests as well as curates this data information. Clearly Defined is an open source project and it is crowdsourced. Eclipse works very closely with Clearly Defined. We are curating and we hope to curate on a more regular basis for moving forward. And we also hope to be able to provide some greater donations of content. This is all in the spirit of contributing back and participating. In fact, I sit on 2 biweekly calls with Clearly Defined, one, their curation steering committee, as well as their general meetings. I would encourage everyone who is involved in this arena to do contribute back and become part of this open source initiative, Clearly Defined. Automated tooling. Eclipse created an open source tool using command line interface, which generates a dependency file based on a download that maps against 2 sources of truth to resolve license information. This tool is referred to as the Dash license tool. The URL where you can obtain it from GitHub, the GitHub repository, is shown on the screen, and the tool is provided subject to the EPL 2.0. So when the tool has the dependency map, it then goes off to try and resolve the license information, first based on IPzilla, our very own database, and then Clearly Defined service, which is a score of POS-approved licenses. If all of the dependencies are resolved, that's it. The Eclipse project can continue on its development cycle and not worry about any further IP issues until they introduce any other third-party libraries. Of course, if there are unresolved or restricted items based on the license checker, then it requires a closer scrutiny by the Eclipse IP team. This is when an Eclipse project would reach out to the IP team for assistance. The IP team will then utilize other tooling and investigate at a deeper level if this content has a license that can in fact be approved for Eclipse distribution. So on that note, the Eclipse IP team does utilize other tooling. They utilize Scan Code Toolkit from our friends at NextB, Philippe Ombredon. They also use Fossology, which is sponsored by Siemens, and of course, Clearly Defined, which we have been discussing. I'll now turn it over to Wayne Beaton, who has recorded a live demo of the Dash License Tool Checker in action.
The Dash License tool takes a collection of dependencies, and for each one of them, it tries to determine the license information. Now, it uses two different sources for this information. It uses the IP Zilla data that the Eclipse IP team has collected over the years, and it also gathers some data from a third-party trusted source called Clearly Defined. That's a group that the Eclipse Foundation is actually involved in with, and we help them with their curation. We help them gather their data, basically, which again maps dependencies or libraries to their licenses and some other information that they capture as well, but we're primarily focused on the licenses. Now, I'm showing here a terminal screen. This is a command line tool that we've created. It runs entirely in the command line. That's not to say that that's all it can do. I imagine at some point we will turn it into a Maven plugin. I can envision what a possible user interface looks like, but we don't have that for now. So right now it's all command line tool. And I'm going to cheat a little bit. I've got a project here. It's a Maven project. I've already built it. Maven has a wonderful feature where you can actually list the dependencies, and I'm going to do that. Again, this is all just command line tool. Then Maven's going to run the build, and I can scroll through this, and it's saying, say, for each of these different pieces, you see there's a list of dependencies that are resolved. Most of them were, the first few were uninteresting, but this one certainly is. This particular component has all of these dependencies. Now, Maven does also have this relatively cool feature, which allows you to do a dependency tree, so you can see dependencies of dependencies and kind of how they're all related as well. Very handy. But for our purposes, we really just need the flat list. I just need the entire list, the transitive closure of dependencies. Now, we can talk specifically about the phase as well, but we're going to just I'm going to defer that discussion for the time being. Anyway, as I walk through this file, we'll see there's many different pieces that are being built, and each of these different pieces has its own set of dependencies. Now, cute. Now I can there's a way to use the dependency plugin to generate a file. I don't know, I don't personally like it. I'm not sure exactly why. But I can get a listing of all of the dependencies. I can extract from that list, use a little bit of help here. Using a regular expression, I can parse out all of the different Maven group archive version, the GAV pieces. I can extract all of them out of that dependency list. Put them into a single list. I'll sort that list and I'll find all the unique lines. This will eliminate any duplicates. It sort of saves a little bit of time when the tool runs by avoiding those. So I'll just show what that looks like. If I run that, again, it's running that same Maven script, and from that it's extracting out just the dependencies. And see, from here I wind up with this list, and this is just Maven, again, group ID, artifact ID, and then there's some other things, and a version information. So we have all of this information. So now if I take all of this, take this again, and I'm going to pipe this into the tool, the license checking tool. Now the license checking tool is just a Java application. So it runs using Java. It's packaged as we have it right now packaging as what's called a fat jar or a shaded jar. So it's basically one complete jar that has all of its dependencies contained. Of course, I've run this tool on itself. But all those dependencies all self-contained into a single jar file. But you do have to go and grab this content and build it yourself right now. We don't have it in downloads. And like I said, at some point, I do anticipate turning this directly into a Maven plugin, which would make it super easy in this context. But anyway, if I run this, so basically it's doing everything I just said. It's asking Maven for all those dependencies. It's extracting them out. It's sorting them. And then it's passing them to the tool. And the tool is giving me a little bit of information here, some logging information. It's saying it found 43 different items in that list, and it sent them all to the Eclipse Foundation, to IPzilla, to see what IPzilla could find. IPzilla, it turns out, could give me information about 32 of these items. The rest of them were shipped off to Clearly Defined, and Clearly Defined actually only found 2 things in its database, and it gave us a list here saying the license information could not be automatically verified for the following content. And it gives us a list here. So now this is actually the interesting list of that massive, well, relatively massive. Some of these are hundreds of lines long. That longer list, these are the ones that we couldn't identify. Now, as I look at this, I realize that I need to do a little bit better job with deciding what is Eclipse Foundation content, because all of these glassfish entries, and I think, in fact, the activation and the commons runtime, I think most of these, in fact, all of these except for the find bug ones, are actually Eclipse Foundation project content. Which of course don't require a CQ. So this is where we need to use a little bit of intelligence, a little bit of smarts. We need to take this list and we need to determine from this list what, some subset of this actually needs to be CQs. And that's, of course, the next challenge.
And just to reiterate on the process that Wayne walked you through, I'd like to show this overview. So the whole idea is that Eclipse projects are developing and building. When they introduce any third-party libraries, they're performing a self-service validation based on the tooling. And if everything goes according to plan, they follow swim lane number 4. And of course, they request a release. The IP team then does a full clearance to ensure that any IP included is vetted, and they're now allowed to move on to their release, and it's approved. During the cycle of self-validation, if they do find that the tooling is indicating that not every dependency can be resolved, or if there are restricted dependencies included, then that's when swim lane 3 comes into play, and the project would reach out to the IP team, asking them for assistance for resolution and verification. The IP team then takes over, and assuming can give a green light, then the project continues to develop and build again until they introduce more third-party content. If they don't, or if they do, then again, they're self-servicing as part of the development cycle, and they go back to either swim lane 4 or swim lane 3 until IP is vetted and cleared for a release. Best practices. Please do try and include and enable license compliance as part of your open source software development process. This is extremely important, not just for the developers or committers, but also for the folks who are in the legal arena regarding this. Doing this process together is a win-win for both parts of organizations, foundations, communities. Ensuring that you include a software bill of materials, or you at least identify the software components that are included with your open source project, what versions of the software components are included, and of course, including the license files that govern those components within your repository is extremely important as well. At the Eclipse Foundation, as well as Clearly Defined, ScanCode Toolkit, and many, many others, we have all embraced the SPDX license specification, and we are utilizing the SPDX license identifiers in our source code. We are also including copyright and license headers in our source code, and we feel strongly that repositories of open source software should include a README file, a notice file, and any applicable license files. To finish up, we'd also encourage everyone to crowdsource with the greater open source community with respect to curating license data. Thank you for listening. Open source governance is a key component of open source adoption. We are proud of the gold standard we have at the Eclipse Foundation, and we fully believe collaboration with others openly and transparently is the way forward. I encourage you to get involved. And now we have time for questions and answers. We do have time for some questions, I understand. So we'll just start with question number one from Ben. How do you mitigate issues such as software intended for commercial use that makes use of GPL libraries? So basically, this is the entire system that we were just talking about. So if any third-party libraries are GPL libraries only, that's their license, our tooling would find those issues, because that is an issue for Eclipse distribution. The GPL is not approved for Eclipse distribution. So any third-party libraries that are subject to the GPL 3 only would not be approved for an Eclipse project to leverage. Question number 2 comes from Thomas. When will it be mandatory to use the Dash license tool in our build process? Or in other words, when is the tool ready? So the tool is ready now for Eclipse projects to be using. We're still accepting IP requests for those projects that aren't using the tool yet. But we are encouraging, and we will be continuing to evangelize and get the word out that it's there for use. It's easy to use, and we also encourage Eclipse projects to use it and, of course, contribute back. So let's make the tool stronger together. In terms of integrating it into a build system and having an end-to-end solution, that is certainly something that we really want to be working towards, and hopefully that is something that we can begin to investigate and plan for 2021. Boris had a question. Even before the tool becomes mandatory, where can we find it, even in alpha version? I believe my slide deck includes a link to it. It's in an Eclipse repository, and I will certainly make sure that I send this out, Boris, especially to you or anyone else. It is there. It's under the EPL2, and absolutely, as Eclipse projects, let's start using the tool and let's start making it better. Thank you. Somebody posted it, I believe, for me. Thank you, Dennis. Question from, I believe it's Paris. Do you mean license and or subscription, since a lot of software is licensed as a subscription? So what we're referring to mostly in this presentation is third-party libraries that are under an open source license. In terms of subscriptions, typically that's not under an open source license, at least not that I'm aware of. And so that wouldn't be a third-party package that an Eclipse project would be enabled to leverage. Because of course, the whole idea here is that we are ensuring that the content included in Eclipse projects is all open source, under open source licenses, and free for commercial use. Question from Bassem. Is this feasible for 700 IT projects in agile mode with one IP office? Doesn't that introduce actually that's the whole idea. That is why we are enabling our projects to self-validate, to find out any licensing issues prior to a release and at the beginning of their development cycles. The way we were doing it before was we had 3 IP analysts and as you said, hundreds and hundreds of IP requests, which we just couldn't scale to. So this is why we're actually using and moving to the model that I've been speaking about here today. We have another question from Martin. How can I get the presentation which you showed? The slide deck will be available after the presentation on the EclipseCon site, and I believe as well in this platform, SwapCard. And by all means, feel free to reach out to me by my email address at the Eclipse Foundation, and I will be happy to discuss and provide any details that I can. Question 8, I believe. What are the main differences between the Apache 2.0 license and the EPL 2.0 license? So anybody who is in the IP arena will know that the Eclipse public license is a weak copy left license. And so the Apache license is not a copy left license. So the Apache license can be sub-licensed, and there is really no requirement to, if you make any modifications, to continue to distribute those modifications subject to the Apache license. However, with the EPL license, if you make modifications, those modifications have to be distributed subject to the EPL 2.0. That is a requirement. Another question here, what support is provided to assist new and existing projects to validate? Just make sure I haven't lost conformant to good governance model. So the Eclipse Foundation and its projects, we do have a due diligence process. We do have a development process cycle. All of this is included in our Eclipse handbook. And I would actually, if somebody has that handbook, I'll actually try and get this out to the list if it's possible. Our handbook contains all of the information that you need. And it goes through our intellectual property process, our development process, and it really enables a project to be successful, and to be successful, you're conforming. Just want to reiterate that even though we're trusting our projects to self-validate prior to any formal release, the intellectual property group are also performing a review of the code that's being used in your download or leveraged in your download to ensure compliance. So in no way are we not providing any assistance or any conformance or compliance to our Eclipse projects. At the end of the day, we certainly still are. I think we have a couple of minutes left. Maybe that's it for today. No more questions. I'd like to thank everybody for joining and listening. And I really do encourage everyone trying to get involved in crowdsourcing the movement of curating licensed data and making that licensed data better. And of course, we look forward to more and more projects coming to Eclipse and taking advantage of this wonderful compliance model that we're using today. Thanks, everybody.